I'm very excited for the opportunity for y'all to meet Mrs. Herring. And one of the fun things about introductions is you get to say things you don't normally get to say in normal conversation. We've known each other for about 20 years. When I first moved to Nashville, my roommate was from Memphis. And got to meet some of his friends, and I would go to Memphis, and one of them said, "You really need to meet Joyce Herring." It's like, okay. I'd love to, And so we'd have fun talking about books. And so went over to your house once or twice, and there's those relationships that God puts into your life at specific times and for specific reasons, and those are beautiful things, because I think we saw each other those twice, and then probably the next time was about 15 years later. General Assembly in the train platform in Dallas.
Right.
But it's the beauty of those relationships that are not based upon a lot of time, but on intense conversation and just wonderful connection that the Lord brings. And in our early conversations, I think I said this in the email that I sent out, Joyce introduced me to Chesterton's writings and reminded me of George MacDonald, and introduced me to Charles Williams and Kristen Lavensdatter, and suggested that I read the Space Trilogy by Lewis and other things by Lewis other than the Narnia Chronicles. And it was at a time, too, in which I was relatively new to town. My roommate had left for the summer, and I had a very bad summer of addiction to books. And now that could be a good thing. This was not. I would secretly go to the bookstore late at night and buy several volumes and sneak them home in a brown paper bag. It was not the healthiest of experiences, but it was a very rich time in terms of, in a period of about 3 months, I read 40 books, including the Space Trilogy twice. So it was very formative after I finished up my master's degree, relatively new to town, very formative time that God used to help kind of structure my thinking, introduce me to various authors and literature, and establish a relationship that for 20 years now. And so Joyce and her husband Wayne moved to Franklin
Almost 5 years ago.
5 years ago, and just around the corner from us, which is so fun. So it's great to be able to be reconnected, and I'm so pleased to be able to share her with y'all, and so glad y'all are here. So she's going to speak about Chesterton's poetry, and you'll give us all the other information we need to know. So
Thank you, Greg.
thank you.
I have been looking forward to this. How many of you already read Chesterton? Oh, good. I was introduced to Chesterton in a sermon, actually, about 30 years ago. My husband had to preach the Sunday morning pinch hit for our preacher whose younger brother had been killed in a car wreck the 2 days before. And it's, of course, a very emotional, delicate situation. What does one preach in that sort of atmosphere? And in the sermon, he quoted, he must have copied it. My husband is not a poetry reader. He tries hard for my sake, but he doesn't just pick up poetry and read it. So I don't know where he got it, but he quoted he read one stanza from a Chesterton poem that just absolutely blew me away. Do you know The Deluge? Any of you who read him? Though giant rains put out the sun, here stand I for a sign. Though earth be filled with waters dark, my cup is full of wine. Tell to the trembling priests that here under the deluge rod, one nameless, tattered, broken man stood up and drank to God. Well, I almost didn't hear anything else the whole Sunday morning. At the time, Chesterton was out of print, very difficult to find. I paid a ridiculous amount for a used volume of poems, and pretty much was stuck with his, stuck myself to his poetry for a number of years. then one time we had gone sailing with some friends, and on the way home, I had read on a sailboat, what do? You know, but sail and swim and read. And not even that much eating because nobody wanted to cook. So that was it, swim, sail, and read. And I had read everything I had with me. I was down to one little volume that I had, the title of which I had run into in reading C.S. Lewis's autobiography, Surprised by Joy. Are you familiar with that one? Well, you read that one and you automatically have a reading list this long of books you want to follow up on, that he, of course, assumes we all read as children. And so I had taken The Man Who Was Thursday with me. Have you read The Man Who Was Thursday? Well, I have to tell you, I want my plot to make sense. I don't necessarily need to be able to figure out what's going to happen, but I want to be able to understand what is happening. And if I had not been stuck on an airplane with nothing else to read except the Sky Mall catalog, that is one of the few books in my entire life I would have put down. I don't put books down. I figure if they're in print, I'll give them at least to the last page, figure out why. But I would have put that book down had I had much choice. Got to the Nashville airport, we were in Memphis at the time, got to the Nashville airport and finished the last maybe 20 pages. Y'all, you know the guy in The Ancient Mariner who goes around grabbing people and says, "Listen, stranger, I got to tell you this." I wanted to grab somebody in the airport and say, "You got to read this book." It really just flipped me around, because his understanding of the beauty and the pure, unadulterated joy of blind obedience is just a glorious thing. So Chesterton pulled me in with those two, and I think it's the joy in Chesterton that gets me the most, because his life was not easy. He's very popular now. We think of him, and he was very popular in England at the time, but he had some very real pain in his life, and he never let it get him down, because he trusted. He loved and he trusted. In fact, one of the ways Chesterton came to Christ was that he was just, by grace, he was a thankful man. He was a thankful child. And he was so thankful for everything. He wrote one little poem about shoelaces. Once I looked down at my shoelaces. Who gave me my shoelaces? The bootmaker? No. Who gave the bootmaker himself? What have I ever done that I should be given shoelaces? And he meant it. He meant it. He was so thankful for everything that as an adult he began to think there must be someone to thank. And that was one of the three major influences, actually, that brought him to Christ, which I just think is absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. Why aren't more of us thankful people, those of us who are believers? He was not even a believer at the time. So it sort of shames us. Anyway, I brought a few of my favorite. I'm a softie for poetry anyway, and his novels are too long to talk about, or too involved to talk about in a short time like this. So it was an easy choice for me to go with the poetry. And there are a few here that I think really help to capture his view of life and of himself and of mankind and of God's sovereignty over us. I think if we can grasp these, once we see these, then we begin to see more that he's doing in his novels, even in his essays. There's this wonderful essay about syntax, sentence syntax, and it's absolutely hilarious. But even in that sort of essay, you see this bubbling up joy and a commitment to the order of the universe and the one who orders the universe. It's just a beautiful thing to see. So let's start with where to start? Let's start with the mortal answers. And I did not think in time to run this off for you, so if you would please listen, I will try to read as clearly as I can. The Yeats poem to which the mortal answers is an answer. Now, Chesterton, to my knowledge, had no enemies. He just loved people. He loved everyone, whether you could agree with them or not. And he was so witty that no one could dislike him, even those who would have been enemies philosophically just couldn't help but love the man. So he had very warm friendships with people like H.G. Wells and William Butler Yeats and George Bernard Shaw, people with whom he was almost at the other end of the spectrum philosophically. But, and Yeats was one of those people, of course, who can read Yeats's poetry and not like the guy, no matter what he really believed. But Chesterton and Yeats did get along beautifully. Yeats wrote this poem called The Stolen Child. Where dips the rocky highland of Sleuthwood in the lake, there lies a leafy island where flapping herons wake the drowsy water rats. There we've hid our fairy vats full of berries and of reddest stolen cherries. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. This is the fey world, the fairies trying to lure the human child from his world into theirs. Come join us, because your world hurts. You are too young to know it yet. You cannot understand. I want to tell you something, kid, it doesn't get any better. Life is tough and it gets tougher. And the fairies are saying, you can escape all that. Come with us. We spend our time playing jokes on people like your parents. We spend our time teasing the water rats. We don't worry about all these things that make humans grieve, because it doesn't happen to us. Where the wave of moonlight glosses the dim gray sands with light, far off by furthest Rosses, we put it all the night, weaving olden dances, mingling hands and mingling glances till the moon has taken flight. To and fro we leap and chase the frothy bubbles while the world is full of troubles and is anxious in its sleep. Thank you. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Can't you just hear that Irishness in this? I mean, they cry all the time. Crying. Where the wandering water gushes from the hills above Glencar and pools among the rushes that scarce could bathe a star, we seek for slumbering trout, and whispering in their ears give them unquiet dreams, leaning softly out from ferns that drop their tears over the young streams. Come away, O human child, to the waters and the wild with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand. Away with us he's going, the solemn-eyed. He'll hear no more the lowing of the calves on the warm hillside, or the kettle on the hob sing peace into his breast, or see the brown mice bob round and round the oatmeal chest. For he comes, the human child, to the waters and the wild with a fairy, hand in hand, from a world more full of weeping than he can understand. Beautiful poem. Beautiful poem. This is Chesterton's answer. Look, please, at the mortal answers. The title, of course, being a reference to the immortality of the fey world. From the wood of the old wives' fables they glittered out of the grave, and with all the armies of Elfland I strove like a beast at bay. Okay, he's setting up his conflict right here. This is very attractive, if we're honest, isn't it? How many of us would not have moved to Middle Earth had we been given the chance? I mean, I'd be there in a shot. This sort of thing is very attractive to us. And Chesterton says, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. With only a right arm wearied, only a red sword worn, and the pride of the house of Adam that holdeth the stars in scorn. Love that verse. We're going to come back to that one. For they came with chains of flowers and lilies' lances free, there in the quiet greenwood, to take my grief from me. The very thing that the fairies are offering to rescue the child from. He says they're threatening to take my grief. Why would he say that? And I said, now all is shaken when heavily hangs the brow. When the hope of the years is taken, the last star sunken. Now, hear, you chattering cricket. Hear, you spawn of the sod. The strange, strong cry in the darkness of one man, praising God that out of the night and nothing with travail of birth he came, to stand 1 hour in the sunlight, only to say her name. Falls through her hair the sunshine in showers. It touches, see, her high bright cheeks in turning. Ah, elfin company, world is hot and cruel. We are weary of heart and hand, but the world is more full of glory than you can understand. Go back to that second verse. Only a right arm wearied, only a red sword worn, and the pride of the house of Adam that holdeth the stars in scorn. I think this is critical to Chesterton's worldview. What is the pride of the house of Adam? What is the house of Adam? Mankind. What is the pride of being human? The image of God. The pride of the house of Adam is that we bear God's image. Of all of creation, only man bears God's image. What does he mean when he says the pride of the house of Adam that holdeth the stars in scorn? I believe that's a direct biblical reference to what?
Psalm 8? Psalm 8?
Psalm 8. Can you quote it for us?
When I behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, what is man that you are mindful of him?
Okay.
And the Son of Man.
Okay. It starts with, O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. Set thy glory above the heavens. And then a couple of verses later, when I consider the heavens, the works of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him? The Son of Man that thou visitest him. For what? What's next, you know?
Can't remember.
I just paid my grandchildren $1 to memorize it. Somebody spoke up. What? You made him a little lower than the angels and crowned him with glory and honor. Now, Hebrew scholars, well, at least 2 of them, have told me that that a little lower than the angels, that this is an adverb of time, not an adverb of place or position. It doesn't mean we're just below the angels in the order of the creation in the Elizabethan great chain of being. What it means is for a little while, we're for a little while lower than the angels. Our mortality, the effects of the fall, still affect us, but it's only temporary. One day, and Scripture makes it clear, one day we'll judge angels. One day we will be revealed as the crown of creation. Did you ever think about that when angels sinned, God did not bother to redeem them, did he? He didn't make any sacrifice for Lucifer and his crew. He did that only for man. And there's a great glory in that. That is the pride of the house of Adam. We alone bear God's image. We alone are the crown of creation. We alone are given dominion over the creatures. Under God's dominion, of course. And that is sandwiched, this, thou hast made him a little lower than the angels, crowned him with glory, honor, put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen and so forth. Comes smack in the middle between the first and last verse, which are word for word the same. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth. It is God's glory at the beginning, at the end, supporting us, giving us that reflected glory. And Chesterton points out throughout his literature, he points out that pain is a part of that. No other creature in creation can hurt like we can, folks. The stars don't usurp each other's positions in the solar system, you know? Lions don't steal each other's mates. Starfish don't steal each other's inheritance. Creatures, the lower creatures don't betray one another. Maybe we could say they murder one another. But nobody can hurt, no other creature can hurt like people can, except God himself. Christ wept. Christ grieved. We can grieve the Holy Spirit. That is a part of the image of God in us, that we can hurt to the extent, to the depths that we can, in the way that we can. Our hearts can hurt in a way no other creatures can, because we alone bear the image of God. And Chesterton says, you will not take that from me, because to do so is to rob me of part of the glory that God has given me. It's to rob me of part of the joy of this life. And there's a George Herbert poem, Easter Wings. Are you familiar with George Herbert? He was one of the metaphysical poets. And in Easter Wings, he talks a little bit about pain, and he ends with, affliction will further the flight in me. The worse I've hurt, the more I can rejoice, the more I will rejoice, the more I am equipped to rejoice when things work out right at the end, as they will. The more of reality of sin we have suffered, the greater our understanding of what redemption is. There's an old gospel song, and I don't even know the name of it, but it's about singing in heaven. They're singing up in heaven such as we have never known, where the angels sing the praises of the Lamb around his throne. Do y'all know that one? The harps are ever tuneful and their voices always clear. Oh, that we could be more like them while we serve our Master here. And there's several verses, but the chorus is, holy, holy is what the angels sing. And I expect to help them make the courts of heaven ring. But when I sing redemption story, they will fold their wings. For angels never knew the joy that our salvation brings. And Chesterton picks up on that over and over and over. Yes, life hurts. Embrace it as the gift of a good God, because he works all things together for good. He does all things well. The day is coming when we will be able freely from our hearts to thank him for everything that has happened. I fully believe that someday when I get to glory, I'm going to look back at my life and I'm going to say, oh, that's what you were doing. That's what you were doing. Thank you for doing it your way and not mine. Thank you for saying no to that prayer and that one and that one. Because if you'd done it my way, it wouldn't be so beautiful. He knows what he's doing. And Chesterton says, just take it and trust him. They came with chains of flowers. Now, I've already spent too much time on one poem, so I'm going to skip. I just want to point out quickly that the chains of flowers, they're attractive, they're flowers, but they are chains. To escape our grief would be to enslave ourselves to an unreal happy, happy, happy all the time life, which is not true. Don't teach your children that song. In 1, 2, 3 stanzas, he acknowledges that life is tough, and he ends with just coming right out and saying, the world is hot and cruel, and we get tired of it. We are weary of heart and hand, but the world is more full of glory than you, fairies who've never suffered. The world's more full of glory than you can understand. And I'll not give that up. Beautiful approach. So let's look quickly at the Ballad. Well, the Ballad of the White Horse is well over 100 pages, but and it will reward many-fold your reading. But it's about Alfred the Great. Any questions, comments? Y'all please speak up. I'm not good at drawing out questions, but I do not mind one bit of being interrupted. So please speak up if you are so inclined. Has anyone read the Ballad of the White Horse? Alfred the Great was one of Chesterton's heroes, and he wrote this long poem about Alfred, a Christian king, and he was. Alfred is on the run. The Danes have defeated his army. He is hiding out in the marshes. He starts going about his little corner of England to raise his army again because he's not giving up. Calls on one of his generals' homes, and the husband is not home, but the wife does not recognize Alfred. Of course, he doesn't wander around the countryside in his royal robes with a crown on his head. He's just dressed like a peasant man, calling on another peasant man, and the peasant wife doesn't recognize her king. So, and he's a defeated king anyway. So she doesn't recognize him, but she agrees that he can wait for her husband, but I'm busy. I don't have time to sit here and entertain you. You watch those cakes and make sure they don't burn while I do my housework, and as soon as my husband gets home, y'all can do whatever, talk about whatever you need to talk about. Well, Alfred's watching the cakes. He gets to musing about having lost the battle and what he needs to do to take care of his people and so forth, and sure enough, he lets the cakes burn. And lets one of them fall into the fire. And the lady is furious. She picks it up and throws him out of the house, picks up the cake and throws it after him, smacks him on the face, so he's got this big red scar on his burn on his face. He's sitting under the tree waiting for this man, for the husband to get home. And Chesterton says, the beasts of the earth and the birds looked down in a wild solemnity on a stranger sight than a silver elf, on one man laughing at himself under the greenwood tree. The giant laughter of Christian men that roars through 1,000 tales, where greed is an ape and pride is an ass, and Jack's away with his master's lass. The miser is banged with all his brass, the farmer with all his flails. Tales that tumble and tales that trick, yet end not all in scorning, of kings and clowns in a merry plight, and the clock gone wrong and the world gone right, that the mummers sing upon Christmas night and Christmas Day in the morning. This one is chock full to the brim. The man who can laugh at himself, the giant laughter of Christian men. The giant laughter of Christian men is possible only to the man who understands what we've just been talking about, that God is in control, that I bear his image, and things can happen to me that just don't happen to other creatures. You know, even monkeys don't throw hot cakes at each other. He's sitting there going, this can only happen to me, of course. Rather than getting angry, rather than talking about his position, woman, don't you know I'm the king? I can have your head cut off. He can laugh at himself. He can laugh at the effects of the fall in his life, those little mundane, stumbling over your own feet effects that wouldn't happen in a perfect world. Guess what? We don't live in a perfect world. We're not perfect people. We do stupid things to other people and they do them to us. And sometimes we do them to ourselves. But Chesterton says the Christian man can laugh about that because this is not the end of the story. It's not the end of the story, folks. It's not even a chapter. Not even the end of a chapter. It's just one little part, one paragraph. The giant laughter of Christian men that roars through 1,000 tales. The real stories where greed gets its comeuppance, where pride is made to look like a stupid fool. And sin does make fools of us all, doesn't it? You remember in Silas Marner when Silas, who lives for nothing but gold, and he gathers and gathers and gathers the gold, and he's not a good neighbor, and he's not a good citizen, and he doesn't care about anybody, and nobody cares about him, because all he cares about is his gold, and he just loves it because it's gold. He's stashing it under the floorboards of his house, and one day he comes home and it's gone. And greed has made an ape of him. And you get the plantation, the southern plantation owner, or the modern day soybean farmer. We have friends who have like 10,000 acres, I'm not exaggerating for the sake of effect, in the Mississippi Delta. Live high on the hog, I'm telling you. Now, this particular one is a godly man, and we dearly love him. But, there are people in those societies, there are people right here in our own society, who everything has to look right. Their wife has to work out all the time because she's got to look just right, and she's got to wear the right clothes, and she has to have the right jewelry and drive the right car, and the children have to go to the right schools and wear the right name brands and drive the right cars and visit the right countries on their spring breaks, and everything has to look just right, and he's got it all under control, and he's making amends, and he's making all the neighbors jealous, and he comes home one day, and that daughter has run off with the stable hand, because pride makes fools of us all. We cannot control things. And Chesterton says the Christian man goes, well, of course you did. You asked for it. Like Flannery O'Connor's story, she goes, these people, what's the one about, where she sees, at the end, she sees the vision of all the no goods going to heaven ahead of her. What's that one? Y'all know what it's
Revelation.
Yes. And you go, lady, you've been asking for it since page 1, since the first sentence of the story. You've made a fool of yourself with your sin, and that's what we do. And Chesterton says, laugh it off and do better next time, because it is going to work out in the end. If you belong to Christ, it's under control, and you cannot mess up his good plan for you. You can grieve him. You can grieve the Holy Spirit. You can be a stumbling block to people. But in the end, folks, even that's going to work out okay. There's nothing God's not in control of. Nothing he's not working for his glory. Nothing that's not working for good. Nothing. Tales that tumble and tales that trick make us all look like bumbling idiots, yet end not all in scorning. And look at this. Whether you're king of the universe or the court jester, you are in a fix. You're in a mess. A fallen man in a fallen world, and you're in a fix. But Chesterton said, it's really just a joke. It's a merry one. The end is going to be comedy. It's not tragedy. Kings and clowns in a merry plight, and the clock gone wrong, and the world gone right. The clock is one of the few things we can count on. I knew when I walked in today that I was going to run out of time, because the clock's not going to slow down just because I like what I'm talking about. The clock doesn't slow down for anything. One thing we can know is that the sun is going to go down, and in the morning it's going to come back up, and the clock's going to keep going whether you are enjoying it or not. That's one thing that's dependable. But what if it went wrong? What if you do exactly right and it doesn't work out exactly right. I taught high school English. We had an honor code in our school. And you know the dilemma there. If I report someone who has violated the honor code, who's going to suffer? I am. Because all my peers are going to be mad at me. What if I refuse to cheat on the income tax? Well, I'm going to wind up paying more money. What if I decline a job promotion because it's going to require Sabbath work? You're not going to get a promotion. Those things that we do out of obedience, you would think there would be we would see an immediate profit, benefit, and it sometimes just doesn't work. The clock goes wrong. I can tell you, I one morning woke up and, no point going into the whole story, but when my youngest was 3 months old, she started losing weight. Now, it's kind of humorous to me that when a baby loses 3 ounces, the doctor gets concerned. But she lost 3 ounces, and the next week she had lost 2 more, and he put her in the hospital. And I can tell you, I walked into a hospital room, and you know what she was in? A crib. A crib in a hospital room. Folks, that's not supposed to be. There should not have to be baby beds in a hospital. And there she was, and I remember thinking, this is crazy. This is not the way life is supposed to be. The clock had gone wrong. And Chesterton says, yeah, but the world's still going right. The world is still going right. It's still under control. It is still comedy and not tragedy. And you know how I know that? Because of what the mummers sing up on Christmas night and Christmas Day in the morning. Because God incarnate came here and suffered what I suffer and redeemed it all. He made it all right. And my seal, my surety that it's all right, not just that it's going to be all right someday, it's all right now. Right now, it's all right. Your life is right. You know why? Because Christ has already been here and made sure nothing's going to happen to you that is not good. Do we need to stop? We're coming up on 45 minutes. Could I would like to look at one more for those of you who would like to. I promise you are not rude and you do not hurt my feelings if you want to slip out. It's okay. I won't look. Because I can't let you go without the great minimum. And I promise this won't be quick. It is something to have wept as we have wept. Now, to get the effect of this, I think you need to think in terms of, I don't know whether it's still the expression, but a number of years ago, people used to say, this is something else. Remember that? You too young to, y'all remember that? Okay. When I was growing up, my parents said, man, that's something. That is something. And that was Chesterton's generation. It is something to have wept. There it is again. It is something to have wept as we have wept. It is something to have done as we have done. It is something to have watched when all men slept and seen the stars which never see the sun. It is something to have smelt the mystic rose. Do you know what that is? The mystic rose. How many of you run into that in your...
Rose of Sharon?
No. Good guess, though. Very good. The mystic rose is how about the blue rose? No, okay. It's a very old symbol of, we're talking like medieval, around that time.
Is it like Dante's Paradise? Paradise?
Very much, very similar. And the rose garden and that sort of thing. It's the symbol of what can't be put into words, okay? Of the other, the what Lewis calls a myth, that something that communicates with us on a level that words just can't reach. Words are insufficient. And so we have music, and we have art, and we have romantic love, and we have the grand Tetons, and we have sunsets, and things that move us on a level that we just cannot express in words. And that's what the artists are trying to achieve, the mystic rose. And that's about as close as I can come, because I can't put it into words either, but you've all felt it. You've all felt that something swelling up inside, and you don't know, you can't always tell what caused it, and you certainly can't drum it up, but sometimes it just happens. I remember one time when I was in the 9th grade, I was madly in love for the first time. I had just bought, and I couldn't believe I did this, I had actually bought a Christmas gift for my boyfriend, and we had a snow day in Clinton, Mississippi. That is a rare and beautiful thing. We had a snow day, and I was spending the afternoon with my best friend, had my husband, well, he's now my husband, tie tack in my pocket, and because I'd taken it to show her, of course, and walking down her back steps, and something just swelled up inside me as though I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. And Lewis calls it joy. Our response to myth is this joy that we can't put into words. And that's what the mystic rose is all about. Chesterton says, it is something to have smelt that mystic rose. Although it break and leave the thorny rods, it is something to have hungered once, as those must hungered who have ate the bread of gods. That's not a misprint, and it's not poor grammar. It's very old usage of eat, ate, eaten. Chesterton says, man can weep as we have wept. Man can sense this longing that is, in fact, a beautiful longing, that is joy, that is the response to myth, and that doesn't mean untruth. If you've read any Lewis, you know that. Just to have seen, to smell that rose, just to have been there, to have experienced that joy, that kind of longing for that long, that's something. And maybe I can't explain it to you. And what are you going to do if you find the mystic rose? You're not going to cut it. Of course, you got to leave it growing. Cameras aren't allowed. Can't dig it up and transplant it. You can't take a root. All you can do is smell it and go home. And you try to tell people about it, and they go, oh, come on now. Give me some proof. Hey, how do I know you've been there? All I got is these scars. All I can show you is these scars. But I know what it smells like. I've been there. And it's something. To have seen you and your unforgotten face, brave as a blast of trumpets for the fray, pure as white lilies in a watering space, it were something, though you went from me today. To have known the things that from the weak are furled, perilous, ancient passions, wild and high. It is something to be wiser than the world. It is something to be older than the sky. In a time of skeptic moths, and I'm sorry we don't have time to talk about this one, in a time of skeptic moths and cynic rusts and fatted lives that of their sweetness tire, in a world of flying loves and fading lusts, it is something to be sure of a desire. That doesn't describe the 21st century. I've never seen a description of it. Lo, blessed are our ears, for they have heard. Yea, blessed are our eyes, for they have seen. Let the thunder break on man and beast and bird and the lightning. It is something to be. Just to be, just to live this life as a man, fallen though I am, I bear God's image. It's something. Thank you.